In a kingdom that fears demons, one knight abandoned everything to protect the girl the kingdom wanted dead. But some secrets were never meant to awaken. Several days later, they finally saw the forgotten ruins. The frozen remains stretched endlessly beneath the mountain valley, like the corpse of a forgotten civilization, swallowed by time itself. Collapsed towers pierced through the snow-covered streets. Broken bridges vanished into icy fog. Entire districts had disappeared beneath centuries of frost and ash. And towering above everything, massive black spires clawed upward into the storm-dark sky. The moment Hyori saw them, her chest tightened painfully. This place feels wrong. For once, nobody made a joke. Even Kale's calm expression had disappeared, because the forgotten ruins did not look destroyed. They looked abandoned, like something terrible had happened so suddenly that people simply vanished where they stood. Snow drifted silently through empty streets as the three cautiously descended into the ruins. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally loudly against the ancient stone roads. No animals, no birds, no wind beyond the distant storm above the mountains. Only silence. The deeper they walked, the stranger the ruins became. The outer districts resembled ordinary civilization. Frozen marketplaces, collapsed homes, ancient inns buried beneath snow. But beneath the ice, something else existed. Massive black stone structures stretched below the city like another world, hidden underneath the ruins. Strange symbols covered walls and broken archways. Circles, chains, eyes. Hyori unconsciously moved closer beside Ryu. These markings, Kyle brushed snow away from a nearby pillar. Beneath the frost, faint violet symbols glowed weakly. Mana conductive script, he muttered. Ryu frowned slightly. You can read it? A little. What does it say? Kale remained silent for several moments, then quietly answered. Containment sector. The atmosphere immediately grew heavier. Even the cold somehow felt worse after hearing those words. As they explored deeper into the forgotten ruins, the architecture slowly changed. The upper ruins still resembled homes and ordinary buildings, but the structures below the mountain were different, too symmetrical, too clean. Long underground corridors stretched endlessly beneath the earth. Massive reinforced doors remained sealed beneath layers of ice. Glass tubes taller than houses stood shattered inside enormous chambers. And sometimes they found bones. Not bodies. Bones. Ancient and scattered across the frozen floors. Hyori's tail tightened nervously beneath her cloak. I really don't like this place. No disagreement there, Ryu answered quietly. Kyle slowly crouched beside one of the shattered walls. Deep claw marks carved through reinforced black metal, not scratches. Impact marks, like something had desperately tried to escape. Kale's expression darkened. These ruins weren't built to keep people out. Ryu slowly looked deeper into the darkness ahead. They were built to keep something in. Silence followed, and somewhere far beneath the forgotten ruins, something metallic echoed through the darkness, a low cut distant sound, like chains slowly moving beneath the earth. Hyori froze instantly. Did you hear that? Nobody answered, because all three of them had heard it. That night, they rested inside an abandoned underground library hidden beneath the forgotten ruins. Most of the books had rotted away centuries ago. but a few remained preserved beneath layers of ancient magic. Dust drifted through the dim firelight, while Kale carefully searched through broken shelves nearby. Hyori sat quietly beside Ryu near the small campfire, unusually silent. Even her magic seemed subdued inside the ruins, as if the city itself were watching. Kyle suddenly stopped moving. Ryu noticed immediately. "What is it?" The silver-haired hunter stared silently at one of the preserved books in his hands. And, for the first time since meeting him, he looked unsettled. Slowly, Kyle handed the book toward Ryu. The pages were filled with diagrams: human anatomy, mana pathways, demonic mutations, experimental records, and written repeatedly across the margins of nearly every page, Project Ashen Veil. Hyori stared at the words silently. Her hands trembled slightly. "No." Kyle carefully turned another page. Subject compatibility failure. Another. Demonic integration unstable. Another. Child specimen. Terminated. The underground chamber suddenly felt much colder. Ryu's grip tightened around the book. Hyori slowly backed away from the fire. "What is this place?" Kale looked toward the darkness deeper within the ruins. His voice lowered. "I think, for the first time, we just found out why the Order wanted these ruins erased from history." Then suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled softly. Dust fell from the ancient ceiling overhead, and somewhere deep below the forgotten ruins, something ancient moved, not awake, not fully. Hyori's breathing became uneven, because deep inside her chest, something answered it. The ruins beneath the northern mountains were never supposed to exist. According to official maps, nothing had ever been built there. According to reality, an entire buried civilization stretched beneath the ice. Ancient laboratories, underground cathedrals, collapsed cities, and deep within those ruins, records proving the impossible. Half-demons were not natural. They had been created. Hyori stood silently inside the ruined laboratory while ancient magical lights flickered weakly around them. Rows of broken containment chambers stretched endlessly through the darkness. Some still carried claw marks, others were stained black with old magical residue. Frost coated the shattered floors beneath their feet, while distant metallic sounds echoed somewhere deeper underground. Kale slowly opened one of the preserved records. His expression changed immediately. "What is it?" Ryu asked quietly. Kale hesitated, then handed him the page. Subject stability, failure. Child specimen. Terminated. Ryu's grip tightened. Another page. Bloodline. Compatibility below expected threshold. Another. Subject HY-07. Demonic response successful. Hyori froze. Her hands began shaking. "No." She backed away slowly. "No, no, no." Because for the first time, she realized she was never born naturally. She had been made. The underground chamber suddenly felt much colder. Ryu immediately moved toward her. "Hyori, don't!" Her voice cracked. Purple light flickered violently beneath her skin. "I said don't." The laboratory trembled softly around them. Dust fell from the ceiling overhead. Kyle slowly lowered the documents in his hands. His expression had become unusually serious. "These records are old," he said carefully. "Centuries old." "That doesn't help," Hyori whispered. She stared toward the containment chambers surrounding them. Some were large enough to hold monsters. Others, children. Her breathing became uneven. "All this time," she laughed weakly. "I thought I was just cursed." Nobody answered, because there was nothing comforting to say. Ryu slowly stepped closer anyway. Carefully, like approaching someone standing near the edge of a cliff. Hyori? Her eyes lowered toward the floor. What if they're right? Ryu frowned. What? What if I really am just some experiment? Purple sparks cracked violently through the air. The walls trembled harder. Kyle immediately looked toward the corridors outside. Easy, he warned quietly. But Hyori barely heard him. I don't even know who I am anymore. Ryu grabbed her wrist before she could turn away. Not forcefully, just enough to stop her. Hyori froze. His voice remained calm. You're Hyori. She looked up silently. You laugh too loudly. Kyle blinked once. That is true. You complain constantly. Ryu, you threaten people emotionally. That one was justified. And you nearly drowned in 2 inches of water. That was one time. For the first time since reading the records, a tiny laugh escaped her. Weak, broken, but real. Ryu's expression softened slightly, then quietly, I don't care where you came from. The room became silent again. You're still you. Hyori stared at him, and somehow, that hurt more than the records did, because she realized how desperately she wanted to believe him. Kale continued searching through the ruins while Ryu stayed beside Hyori near the shattered chambers. The deeper Kale explored, the worse the records became. Ancient diagrams covered the walls, human anatomy fused with demonic structures. Manatha circulation systems carved directly into stone, entire bloodlines cataloged like livestock. Some documents referenced ascension, others referenced containment, and repeatedly. One symbol appeared above everything else, a black cathedral. Kale stopped walking. His eyes narrowed slightly. Ryu. Ryu looked up immediately. What? Kale slowly handed him another damage page. Unlike the others, this one contained a map, or part of one. Ancient tunnels stretched beneath a massive city. At the center of the diagram, the same cathedral symbol. Below it, primary seal chamber. Hyori slowly stood beside them. What is that? Kyle's voice lowered. I think this city was only one facility. Silence followed. Then Ryu realized something. The capital. Kyle nodded once. The tunnels continue south, toward Ilarion, toward the holy cathedral itself. Hyori's expression darkened. You're saying the Order built their capital over this place? No, Cal answered quietly. I think they inherited it. The realization settled heavily across the room. Everything suddenly made more sense. The disappearances, the executions, the obsession with controlling half-demons. The Order had not been protecting the kingdom from monsters. They had been hiding the truth. Then suddenly, the entire ruin trembled violently. The lights above them flickered purple. A deep metallic sound echoed beneath the earth, like enormous chains dragging slowly through darkness. All three froze instantly, and somewhere deep below the forgotten ruins, something ancient moved. Not awake, not fully, but aware. Hyori grabbed her chest sharply. Purple light exploded across the floor beneath her feet. And then, a voice whispered through the darkness, "Return." The sound did not echo through the room. It echoed inside her mind. Hyori stumbled backward in terror. Ryu immediately caught her before she fell. Hyori! Her entire body trembled violently. It's calling me! Kyle drew one of his anti-magic blades immediately. The shadows around the laboratory shifted unnaturally. Something moved deep within the corridors beyond the chamber. Too large, too distant, but moving. Ryu slowly drew his sword. We're leaving. Nobody argued. The journey back through the ruins felt completely different now. Every corridor felt alive. Every shadow felt like it was watching them. The abandoned city no longer resembled ancient ruins. It resembled a prison. And something beneath it had just realized Hyori existed. The deeper voice still lingered faintly inside her chest, calling, waiting, watching. Ryu stayed close beside her the entire time, closer than before. Whenever the ruins shook, his hand immediately moved toward her. Whenever distant sounds echoed through the darkness, he positioned himself between her and the corridors, and Hyori noticed every single time. Eventually, they stopped briefly, near one of the upper city bridges overlooking the frozen ruins below. Snow drifted silently across the broken structures. The storm above the mountains had begun calming. Kale leaned quietly against the shattered stone railing nearby. "So," he said calmly, "we're really doing this?" Ryu looked toward the distant south. "We have to. The capital won't exactly welcome us back. It never really did." Kyle almost smiled at that. Hyori stared silently toward the horizon. "The Black Cathedral," her voice sounded smaller now. "If the answers are there." She tightened her hand slightly. "Then that's where we go." Ryu looked toward her. Not afraid, not uncertain, just resolved. And, once again, that strange warmth tightened painfully inside Hyori's chest. Because even after learning the truth, he was still standing beside her. Several hours later, the trio finally departed the forgotten ruins. Snow fell softly around the mountain paths as the ancient city disappeared behind them beneath the storm and ice. But none of them looked back, because somewhere beneath those ruins, something was awake now and waiting beneath the capital of Valerian. The Black Cathedral remained hidden in darkness, waiting for them to return.